Welcome back. You're watching ET Insight. Air India has come a long way from being the pride of the nation to a national embarrassment. It'll take nothing short of a miracle to clean up the mess of the national carrier. But the question is Air India really worth saving? Let's find out.
Air India and Indian Airlines have come a long way from their glorious past. And now what was once the nation's pride is its worst nightmare come true. So then the big question is whether the government should save Air India at all. And if yes, then why?
Today, after its merged entity, both Air India and Indian Airlines, the domestic, they represent the national prestige of this country.
Apart from prestige, having a national carrier makes good business sense from a branding perspective. That's because traditionally national carriers have been the brand ambassadors for several countries like Singapore, Thailand and the UK. They have best represented the country's culture and helped promote it as a tourist destination.
It's not a question of needing a national carrier, you know. What I'm saying is that Air India must survive as a brand, Air India must survive as an airline.
But if the past record of private airlines in India is anything to go by, then this statement does not hold true. For instance, when the markets turned volatile in mid-2009, the government asked private players to keep tariffs in check. They in turn threatened to shut shop.
We reviewed the environment, the passenger traffic forecast, the costs, and concluded that it was just not worthwhile.
All of us are bleeding. Everybody in the industry is bleeding. Everyone, whether the private sector or the public sector.
So while having private airlines is good for consumers in a booming market, it's not necessarily the best option in a volatile economic environment. Now national carriers also serve another big purpose. They connect several regional destinations to large cities and help in nation building. For instance, even today Air India deploys 18% of its aircraft to fulfill this duty, even though it just has a mandatory obligation of 10%. In contrast, private players are driven primarily by profitability when they pick their flying routes.
What will happen if once Air India closes down, that safety valve for a common passenger will go. And this is what exactly the government is anyway indifferent to a common man. So this is one thing which will possibly happen.
From the domestic market to the international market. The fact is that the Indian aviation market is still nascent and requires the presence of a state-sponsored institution. Full-service carriers like Jet and Kingfisher, which have started their international operations, are still struggling to break even. And even though low-cost carriers like Indigo and SpiceJet are profitable, they have only recently started flying to international destinations. That leaves only one player with the wherewithal to offer long-haul services. But critics argue that the very notion of a national carrier is rather archaic, and that governments across the world have had to step in to bail out national carriers that have been unable to transform with changing times. And in some ways, this could be the case with Air India as well. The crisis at Air India is primarily because the airline has not been able to deal with its changing environment. But the blame for that must not lie with the executives alone. The government too needs to share equal responsibility for the failure at NASL.
Well, that's all we have for you in this edition of ET Insight. We'll be back next week, but until then, don't forget to write in with your feedback and suggestions. Thanks so much for watching.